Coming up at 6, the fight to save one of London's oldest living things, Enfield's 800-year-old oak. Good evening, welcome to the ITV News in London. Tonight's main stories. One man dies, another is seriously injured. A shocking rise in London's cycling accidents. Boris isn't building enough. The mayor accused of missing his own targets on affordable homes.
Christmas officially starts here. We're live on Oxford Street as none other than Jessie J turns on the Christmas lights.
And drastic measures to save one of London's oldest trees, still standing after 800 years. Hello, I'm Nina Hossian. Two horrific accidents on London streets have left one cyclist dead and another seriously ill tonight. During rush hour, one cyclist collided with a bus at a junction on Kennington Park Road. Just a few hours later, a man in his 40s was hit by a bus on a tram line in Croydon. He was taken to hospital where he died. He's become the 11th cyclist killed this year in the capital. 3 have died within the last week. Rags Martel reports.
The mangled wreckage shows the force of the impact. The broken remains of a bike that belonged to a 40-year-old man. He was hit by a bus and became trapped under it. The accident happened at midday here on Lower Addiscombe Road. It was a fateful collision and the cyclist becomes the 11th to die on London's roads this year.
And the bus was coming out and at the same time the bike was coming out as well, and it kind of like it clipped the back of the bike and then the bike went underneath the bus, and as the bike was going over you see the guy like kind of tumbling over it as well.
What was the mood of the scene?
Oh, everyone was crying. Like a couple of people were crying, a couple of people were in shock, like a bit hysterical, like hysterical, like really shocked and stuff like that. I was just like, wow.
The man was taken to St George's Hospital in Tooting, where he was pronounced dead. And this morning, another cyclist was hit by a bus in Kennington. A 46-year-old man is in a serious but stable condition. But the safety of cycling in London, once again, put into question.
You're hearing about cyclists that are getting hurt all the time, and I think it's silly. The buses can't see the cyclists neither. It's not easy for them to see them, and it's really sad. It's just really, really sad. It interferes with everything, the traffic and the poor cyclists, obviously. It's not nice.
I think it's sad, really. I think there should be a cyclist lane, purposely just for the cyclists, and it should be, like, say, like a boundary where no cars can interfere with that actual cycle lane.
Police have made no arrests in Croydon, but are urging any witnesses to come forward. Rags Martel, ITV News, Croydon.
Well, those accidents today came as a professional cyclist launched his own campaign to try to improve road safety. 25-year-old Alex Dowsett rides more than 500 miles a week on busy streets. But it was an experience he had as a motorist that has led to him helping police to help make the roads safer for everyone. Luke Farrington has the details.
Motorists and cyclists have to share our roads, sometimes frustrating for those driving cars, potentially very risky though for those on two wheels. Alex Dowsett has to be committed to keep at the top of his sport. Cycling 500 miles a week around Essex can be dangerous though, even more so for Alex, who has haemophilia. It means his blood doesn't clot and can make injuries potentially life-threatening. Despite his chosen profession, he's calling on drivers and cyclists to take more care.
Is that overtake where there's only just enough room? Is that 10-15 seconds that's going to save you on your journey? Is that worth scaring the life out of or risking injuring or killing the cyclist? But then on the other hand, I think the cyclist needs to understand that the car drivers are trying to get somewhere. They're not out for like a leisurely bike ride or they want to get to their destination.
It's not just Alex who's had near misses. 3 years ago, his mum Jan was squeezed off the road by someone towing a caravan.
Oh, I had to have my shoulder rebuilt and a plate put in my arm. And then I had another operation at Christmas where I had it removed.
I guess that must be quite a hard thing. I mean, mums always worry about sons anyway, but especially with your experience and knowing what the roads are like.
Yes, you're right. I mean, my whole family ride. My daughter, she was out yesterday, she did 25 miles. I say, where are you going? What time do you think you'll be back? and thank goodness for mobile phones.
Today was part of a government campaign asking both drivers and cyclists to take more care. With the Tour de France passing through the county next year, more people will be riding bikes, more cause to send the right message early.
Already this year, 73 people have been killed or seriously injured on Essex roads as a result of being involved in a cycle collision. 5 of those, unfortunately, with tragic consequences.
Alex says it's only after he was driving through London in his car and having a near miss with a cyclist that he decided something needed to be done. On the track, it's that difference between first and second that matters, but on the roads it can be far more serious. Luke Farrington, ITV News.
An attempt to halt the closure of a North London A&E department has been rejected by the High Court. Alongside protests from the public, Enfield Council claimed that stopping emergency care at Chase Farm Hospital was unlawful and breached residents' expectations. But a judge ruled there was no arguable case for a judicial review. The department is due to be downgraded by the end of the year. London journalist Kieran Bryan is among 30 people to arrive in St Petersburg today after being detained by the Russian government. He was reporting on a Greenpeace protest over an Arctic oil drilling operation when the group was arrested. And a member of Scotland Yard's call handling unit has been arrested by detectives investigating corrupt payments to public officials. A 33-year-old woman from Essex is being questioned on suspicion of misconduct in public office. The Mayor has been accused of missing a key target on his plans to create affordable housing. Boris Johnson has promised to create more than 50,000 new homes in the capital by March 2015. Today, London Assembly's Housing Committee warned he's already falling behind his own schedule. Ria Chatterjee has the details.
It's a complex and difficult programme to manage. It's the right thing to have pressures and milestones like that. Continues to be a challenge, but one which we're very alive to. The nature of construction is that, things can happen.
Is he trying to tell us the deadline isn't set in stone? At today's committee meeting, the focus was on targets, the promise of thousands of new homes by 2015.
Otherwise, you will miss your target. If you don't get those 5,000 homes started in the next 4.5 months, you will miss your target.
On the new build element, clearly our expectation is for it to start in this financial year.
The Mayor is aiming to deliver 55,000 affordable homes in the capital by March 2015. To be on track, the GLA estimate that 9,000 should have been started by this autumn to allow for an average build period of 18 months per home. But by the end of September, the GLA say there were still 5,000 outstanding starts. The clock is ticking and thousands of projects are still waiting to get underway. This old children's hospital in Hackney has been sitting vacant for 16 years. The front facade will remain untouched, but the insides will be transformed.
The plan is for the building to be demolished in January, with work expected to start sometime next summer. This hospital will be transformed into 188 new homes, 72 of which will be considered affordable housing. I suppose with construction projects, there's no guarantee that things will run exactly to time, but actually that's no use, is it, to thousands of Londoners who are caught up in the housing crisis?
Behind the figures, there are human stories of real people affected by the housing crisis. Earlier today, I was talking to Andy, who lives in Enfield. He's 28, he's married, and he's just had to move back in with his parents because he and his wife can't find somewhere to live.
The Mayor's office maintained that this is a challenging and complex project to manage. Ria Chatterjee, ITV News.
Well, there was a whole raft of figures released today painting a picture of the capital's property market. The Office for National Statistics show house prices in the capital are continuing to rise. In 2007, the average London property cost £329,000. The latest figures show that figure was up by nearly £60,000 in 2012 to £388,000. That's nearly £160,000 more than the UK average house price, which is currently £230,000. Our resident property expert, Kate Faulkner, is here to explain. So we're seeing, as we perhaps expected, a rise in London prices. We've seen today a sharp fall in inflation. If you're sitting at home and you've got a mortgage, what does that mean?
Well, I think what we don't need to worry about too much is that I know it seems like a 60,000 sounds like a fantastic rise, but that's actually quite a lot lower than we've ever seen in the past. So it's still not, we're certainly not a housing bubble stage or anything. And I think from the inflation figure today is actually really good news for all households, because wages aren't keeping up with inflation and house prices are starting to rise above inflation now in London, and therefore hopefully it'll mean there's a bit more money in people's pockets to be able to afford the mortgage. I think what everybody needs to understand if they're going into a property now is that you might get very low rates now, but actually in a couple of years' time those interest rates will grow.
So should people be saving for that happening then?
Yes, you can save for that to happen, and do visit, a good broker is quite essential really at the moment to try and make sure that you've got the right mortgage for you. A lot of times we chat amongst our family and friends to say, well, what are you doing? Or no, I'll think I'll do that. That really isn't the way to do it. You need to talk to a broker who understands your personal circumstances.
Go and see a professional.
Yeah, to make sure that they put you on the right mortgage, because it's quite a complicated process.
I said there was a whole raft of figures. We've had the Royal Institution of Chartered Surveyors talking about supply and demand. Rocketing interest from potential buyers is dwarfing the number of properties for sale. This old problem just won't go away, especially in the capital, will it?
No, and the capital is, even with what Boris is trying to do, we're talking 5-10 years before that's really going to have, what he's doing is going to have some massive impact on the supply here. And yes, demand is going up. Now, actually, that's not unusual. We've seen this with the Help to Buy scheme. We saw this tremendous confidence lift right across the market, even though, Help to Buy still has hardly delivered any sales in comparison to what we'd normally sell. And I think that as far as kind of moving forward, sellers need to have the confidence to put their properties on the market. And what you've got is a bit of a catch-22. Not many properties for sale, which doesn't entice people to put their property up for sale to move on. So we've increased demand, we've increased confidence, all of that's good for the market. And don't forget, it delivers jobs. So the property market delivers a lot of jobs, which is good news. But what we need now is to concentrate on the supply side. It's good that we've got more new homes being built, but actually we really need people to start looking at selling their homes, trading up, trading down, to really drive the market forward and maintain sort of house prices. One bit of good news for London is we've got some 5-year forecasts out at the moment from various different organisations, and what they are saying is that although London is climbing this year, likely to do similar next year, it's likely once interest rates start to rise again, that the prices will start falling back a little. So perhaps the first signs that we're not just going to see a continued rise, and maybe the rises will sort of steady a little bit and make it a little bit easier from an affordability perspective.
Let's end for a change on that good news then. Kate Faulkner, thank you. More than half of London's A&E units are making patients wait too long for treatment. New figures show which trusts are failing to hit government targets of giving treatment within 4 hours. One trust missed the target every single week. Well, to find out how your local hospital is doing and for a full breakdown of the figures, go to our website, itv.com/London. You're watching the ITV News in London. Still to come, Jessie J on why turning on the Oxford Street lights really is a dream come true for her.
It's going to be super exciting. It's going to be so nice to actually be a part of something with London to do with Christmas.
But first, a tribunal heard today how 2 midwives looking after a 4-day-old baby left it in a stationary cupboard. The baby's mother was ill and the hospital admitted today it had no guidelines for newborns who couldn't be looked after by their mothers. The baby was in a cot in the cupboard but was left alone and was found on its front, which put it at risk of a cot death. With more, here's Philippa Thompson.
Yvonne Musunda-Malata was described as honest and trustworthy at today's hearing, but a panel was told that this experienced midwife admitted putting a baby girl in a cupboard because she didn't think. The 35-year-old was on night duty at Queen's Hospital in Romford with colleague Christine Onady. She was asked to look after the newborns so her sick mother could get some sleep. The tribunal heard that the baby was being cared for at the nurses' station when the midwife was called away. Instead of asking a support worker to take over, she placed the baby in a stationary cupboard. She was allegedly discovered alone by a nursery nurse, on her stomach it's claimed, and covered in vomit. The tribunal heard from Miss Malata's boss, Martina Cheng, who said that the midwife confessed that she'd made a mistake and knew she was in big trouble. Miss Cheng said she couldn't understand why Miss Malata would leave the baby in a cupboard, even if the door was propped open. She told her not to do it again. Also giving evidence was Claire O'Toole, who headed up the initial investigation. She believed there was an error of judgment rather than a conscious act of neglect, but it could constitute serious misconduct. Both women deny a number of allegations, including failing to provide appropriate clinical care to a baby. They were both suspended after an internal investigation. If found guilty of misconduct, they could be banned from the profession. The hearing continues. Philippa Thompson, ITV News.
And the ITV News continues with the national and international headlines at 6:30. Here's a look at what's happening with Mary Nightingale.
Millions are still desperate for food, water and aid 4 days after Typhoon Haiyan hit the Philippines. As families wait for help amongst the rubble of what once were homes, the United Nations has today launched a worldwide appeal for aid. Our correspondents will have the latest from the areas worst hit. And a £200 incentive to get mothers to breastfeed. But are the shopping vouchers a bribe? John Mark Austin in the Philippines and me here in the studio at 6:30.
Before that, it's emerged today that the terror suspect who escaped from a mosque in Acton dressed in a burqa had previously been arrested 3 times and then released on bail, the most recent being in August. Mohammed Ahmed Mohammed hasn't been seen since November the 1st. Today, the Home Affairs Select Committee quizzed anti-terrorism officials about his disappearance. Our political correspondent Simon Harris is in Westminster. What did they find out today, Simon?
Well, Nina, the committee heard from the government's independent reviewer of terror laws and from one of the top spooks at the Home Office, and it was quite an eye-opener. First of all, MPs wanted to know if Mohammed Ahmed Mohammed posed a danger.
He's been heavily engaged not only in fighting but in attack planning in Somalia. Also, the Home Secretary believes, no criminal court, of course, has ever shown that. He's also been involved in recruiting other English people to travel to Somalia.
Despite Mohammed giving his followers the slip, Mr Anderson suggested Britain had pride in its intelligence service, thanks to the real wartime code crackers at Bletchley Park and the not-so-real 007. But the committee's chairman wasn't so sure.
Maybe James Bond used to shop at Harrods. Sometimes it looks as if we're going into Aldi these days with people escaping all the time. Doesn't it worry you that the great reputation of our security services and the police are damaged by these stories of people just getting into cabs or going into mosques and changing into burqas?
In this job, Chairman, as in yours, worrying things happen every day of the week.
When Mohammed was arrested in Somaliland, there was no sign of his British passport. So why on earth, asked Mr Vaz, did we go to such lengths to bring him back?
He didn't have a British passport, so we gave him a document to travel, to bring him back, for him to carry on his activities. It does sound a bit odd, doesn't it?
He was entitled to a British passport, and he had a British passport which was issued to him in 2005.
3 times Mohammed was arrested for breaching his control orders or allegedly tampering with his tag. Yet each time the case was adjourned and he was released on bail.
If they hadn't stayed the cases of all these breaches, he'd been prosecuted and convicted. He wouldn't have been on bail at all. He would have been almost certainly serving a sentence of more than a year in prison.
That's correct.
So he played the legal system.
I can't comment on that, but,
no,
I can.
At the end of the session, the committee chairman, Keith Vaz, posed the question, we can't send him to Mars, can we? The obvious answer to that is no, not least because no one has any idea where he is. Nina.
All right, Simon Harris in Westminster tonight, thank you. Next this evening, it may be another 42 days until Santa starts his deliveries, but within the next few minutes, Christmas will well and truly arrive in London. Yes, the Oxford Street Christmas lights are being turned on this evening, and organisers have picked a famous Londoner to do the honours this year. Toby Sadler is there. Are you feeling festive yet?
Feeling festive is compulsory. Even my icy heart is starting to thaw as the juggernaut of Christmas makes its way down the road. We've had quite a few performances so far to get the crowd in the mood. We've had Conor Maynard, James Arthur, and the big name Jessie J has been the main act. We spoke to her earlier today, and she was telling us how excited she was to have the opportunity to turn on these lights.
I am so excited. I've wanted to do this since I was a little girl, and I've always asked my mum and dad to go, and they never wanted to go because of the crowds. You know, you'll never get there, you'll never get near the front. And today they're getting VIP passes, so they'll be right at the front. It's going to be super exciting. It's going to be so nice to actually be a part of something with London to do with Christmas.
4, 3, 2. Okay, the countdown is on.
Happy Christmas!
Well, the lights have come on. I don't know if you caught the end of that count there. The countdown from Jessie J, James Arthur there, lighting up what are some 750,000 LED lights up and down Oxford Street. There's a new deal now. £1.5 million is being spent here to really revamp these lights. No advertisers are involved. It's all about giving a Christmas feeling to Oxford Street. The theme is sort of being a winter wonderland in the street. They hope that, frankly, you come here, you feel Christmassy, you put your hand in your pocket and you spend your money in one of the 300 shops. They're here until January the 6th, that's 12th night. I calculate by then it'll be 55th night here on Oxford Street.
Amy Sadler in Oxford Street. Thank you very much. London's gone all twinkly sparkly. Hope you're all ready for it. It has happened. The main headlines in London tonight. One cyclist has been killed and another seriously injured in separate collisions today. A man who was hit by a bus in Croydon has become the 11th cyclist to die on the capital's roads this year. The Mayor defended his promise of more affordable housing in the capital. The London Assembly has cast doubt on whether he'll reach his target of 50,000 new homes by March 2015. A midwife has admitted leaving a 4-day-old baby in a stationary cupboard at Queen's Hospital in Romford. The newborn was later found on its front in a cot, which put it at risk of a cot death. And some breaking news for you this evening. There will be no trains to and from London Marylebone Station until further notice after a person was hit by a train. We'll bring you more on that as and when we have it. Now, Martin's here with the weather. A frosty night ahead, Martin.
Well, there is, and I thought I'd talk about the different sorts of frost, actually. It always surprises a lot of people that when we get temperatures above zero, how you can still get a frost. And the reason is we measure air temperature at 1.25 metres above the ground. And there can actually be a 5-degree difference between there and the ground itself, and what's happening is the ground releases heat, so it cools down quicker than the air, so it can actually be, according to the thermometer, warmer than freezing, but actually you are still getting a frost, and that's exactly what we're looking at getting tonight, because temperatures are sort of 2 or 3 degrees, feeling really quite cold, but on the grass we are looking like getting a frost. On tarmac and concrete though, it will be staying dry. So, relatively clear skies out there at the moment, and that means it is going to be cold tonight. Pretty frosty for all of us, but the reward is a lovely day tomorrow. Plenty of sunshine, staying dry and fine. And the reason the weather is more settled is all to do with this area of high pressure sitting behind me. That is taking over for the next few days, so it will be staying dry. On Thursday, quite a strong wind as those isobars narrow, but then turning more settled and less windy by the time we get to Friday. Now tonight, as I said, it is going to be really quite chilly. The clear skies are the reason for that happening. The temperature's dipping down into low single figures, and that means most of us probably will see a frost. And with that very gentle breeze, it does mean we could get the odd bit of mist in the rural areas over some higher ground. The clear skies, though, do mean good news tomorrow morning. Look at this. Lots of sunshine around, some clear blue skies. It is going to feel really quite cool and crisp, though, and a similar feel into the afternoon. Now, later on, we will just get the sunshine hazing over slightly as a bit of high-level cloud moves in. But for all of us, it is staying dry and a really nice winter's day. Windy tomorrow night and then very blustery on Thursday, but at least it is staying dry with some sunshine around and then turning more settled on Friday and Saturday. Quite a lot of cloud, relatively chilly as well with temperatures around 10 degrees. I'll see you later. Goodbye.
You mentioned there it's going to get blustery later on in the week, and that could be bad news for part of London's living history you've been finding out
Well,
today.
yes, ancient living history, but only just living. Potentially London's oldest tree. It's 800, possibly even 1,000 years old, but the trunk has started to decay slightly, and they are now doing some emergency work to try and make sure it can survive the future. When they have to close the road and be craned into position, you know tree surgeons have their work cut out. But then, this is no ordinary tree. At least 800 years old, this Mitchenden oak has stood in London longer than Westminster Abbey and the Tower of London, and started to grow before the Magna Carta was signed. Having seen so much history, its future is now in doubt.
When we first noticed the crack, it wasn't very wide at all, and we've been monitoring it for a number of months now, and the crack is certainly getting wider and wider. This prompted us to investigate the tree more thoroughly, and that supported our concerns that the tree was moving. It is twisting, it seems to be subsiding on one side of the tree, which prompted us to reduce the height of the tree and the weight bearing out the crown.
The tree is 18 metres tall. So far, 6 tonnes of wood have been removed.
We think the tree is that important and that valuable that it's worth putting the priority on the benefits of the tree. So we're lifting all of the timber out above. We're not letting anything drop through the centre of the crown and damaging any of the lower timber or any of the lower crown work.
Without being able to count the rings which have decayed inside, it's impossible to tell this oak's exact age, but it should be possible to prolong its future.
It is dramatic action, but we're here to keep the tree alive. It's not as though we want to kill it. We want to keep it available for residents to enjoy it, possibly for another 800 years. Although the action looks drastic, it's the best way forward.
There were just 20,000 people living in London when this tree began its life. Who knows what changes it could see if today's work is successful.
Martin Stew there, and that's all we've got time for so far tonight. After the break, the latest from the Philippines and the rest of the international and national news.